So today's day one, I suppose, of working out the lists for the 350X turbo build, meaning the 180SX with the VQ35D motor from a 350Z. And I've got Nathan over here, who unfortunately for him is always called over because he knows lots of stuff to help me, and he comes over and he helps me. So we're writing lists today for Raceworks products and Turbo Smart that we need, and just sort of getting a plan together to build this car. So Nath, what are we doing?
So we're putting together a list of the parts we need to make a fuel system in the car and to do our data acquisition. So we've decided that, end game we want to make about 400 kilowatt at the wheels on E85. So we have sized our fuel line size, our fuel pressure reg flow and our pumps to safely sustain that amount of power. We've also worked out our fuel consumption for the longest race, so we know what size fuel tank to run. And we've gone through the Raceworks catalogue, and we've worked out what fittings we need. We're going to do it in hardline for a cleaner appearance, what filters we need, and all the other bits and pieces to do a clean installation with their Raceworks surge tank, fuel cell, filters, lines, and all the other bits and pieces. We've also gone through and decided what sensors we need to add to the VQ35 to make it run, because we're turbocharging it. We need a 3-bar map sensor instead of a 1-bar. We need air temp because we're deleting the airflow meter. We want oil pressure and air temp in a high-speed sensor, just so we've got all the data we need for the car to run correctly. Yeah.
I actually just learnt things just then from listening to him tell me what we need. So this is really good. This is what I don't usually do as much. I've sort of learnt this over the years with building cars, and obviously this is a hobby for me and a passion. Nath is actually a mechanic and works on some pretty high-end cars, so he actually does know what he's doing. But over the time I've learnt that you really need to write down everything and really go over what you're going to do before you do it, and work out the costs, work out, for example, I was thinking of just using gauges for oil pressure and temp and boost and all that sort of thing. Hook guy! Wrecking my things. But we've decided that going to probably a dash is going to actually work out more cost effective. At this stage we're looking at a non-data logging dash because we don't really need it for this situation, and the expense I don't think is required. So we might look at that down the track, but at this stage we'll just go for a standard sort of dash, and that sort of will actually work out cheaper than running a bunch of gauges in the car, and obviously cleaner with wiring and everything. So that's something to think about when you are building a car. Are you actually spending more because you think you're saving money? Have a think about it, but it does make sense. So with the car, we're trying to use as many parts that we've got access to and not buy things. So for example, the hull tech that we're getting for it is coming off one of my dad's cars. He races a twin turbo 350Z and he's got hull tech in it, and he has a spare one. So we're going to grab that, and it's designed to work with the VQ, the 350. It doesn't have all the options that say other models do, but it does everything we need it to do. So it kind of makes sense to do that. With the motor, we got the motor and the gearbox from a drift car that we bought ages ago. So it's just been sitting in the garage and not doing anything. So we thought, let's use that engine. I know there's better ways to go with the HR and stuff, but we had a DE sitting there, so it made sense. And also, because it's got the 350Z gearbox mounted up to it, they're much better than a SR box, for example. And then with an SR, if we were going to run an SR, which I looked at doing, worked out it was actually going to be more expensive to do it that way. And we thought this is a bit more unique. I know in America they're doing a lot of VQ conversions into S chassis, but over here in Australia it's not very common. So made sense to, this package already works with that gearbox. Obviously with this engine, clutch is not going to be a problem. Everything's sort of there. So that's why we've gone with that to use.
So yeah, so the ECU has a CAN plug on the back of it, so to go to a dash, because we're not running any extra units.
Yep.
It's just an 8-pin plug, which is a part number 4 here, just to go straight from the ECU.
Which we've put down on that list, haven't we?
We will.
Okay.
I forgot to put that down. But yeah, then you've just got one cable instead of 20, 30, 40 wires for
Makes a lot of
a bunch
sense.
of gauges. 1.2 or 1.8 meters.
Where are we running from and to? The ECU to the dash.
Yeah. Should have the dash here, and you run that along the dash bar.
Yeah, 1.8, definitely.
Yeah, because you're at 1.4 to get
Yeah,
there.
already. Sweet. So, we can get hold of a twin turbo kit off my dad because he's taking it off his motor that he's currently running, and he's going to go to a Nispro or something twin turbo setup on his forged VQ motor. But we're not sure that's the right way to go for this build. So what we're doing is we have some extractors, and we're thinking of cutting them and flipping them basically, so that we can run the turbo at the front. So we're just sussing if that's going to be plausible. We can get hold of a manifold that was built by a local guy on the internet, but we're not sure it's going to sit exactly how we want. So rather than doing that, we kind of want to make it ourselves if we think it's going to work. So Nath is just moving some wiring and mounts out of the way, because we're going to be deleting a lot of this as well with the water system and such, and we can move wiring around. But these are our manifolds. So this guy we're thinking of mounting, so he'll be sitting up like that, in there obviously, and coming out the front. We'll cut them off and put V-bands, and that's what we're sort of thinking. And then we can put the turbo around here, because this is going to flow a lot better than what we looked at on the internet, and there's no one that really makes a kit as such, or there's nothing really too much out there for these with a single turbo kit from what I've discovered. And look, these are X-Force. Whoa, X-Force. Obviously the bolts don't all line up and everything, so we're going to have to cut them and flip them, and we're going to tack it. But looking at that, and if we come in, what, an inch?
Yeah, it's going to come.
So we're going to come this way an inch.
Yeah, once you cut that off.
That off, and we can run. I think that's going to be way better.
That clears the steering.
It looks cool and be functional.
Yeah.
And we can set it up exactly how we want.
Yeah. That'll be the best way to go.
So if we sit that in, so it's about there.
Once you have these up about here, you're not going to run thermo fans because race car. You've got plenty of room here for a 2.5-inch crossover pipe to run straight through the middle. We'll still have access to the belts.
Yep.
It'll be far enough away from the radiator.
Just. We can, yeah. What do you reckon?
I reckon it's doable.
The other option is the turbo ends up in the cabin. That's but I think that creates its own dramas, doesn't it?
Well, it's a lot of cutting out of the floor pan to fit it in. Depending on the class of racing, they might pick on it.
I think it would be okay for sports sedans and for TT, but I think...
A couple other classes.
What about time attack?
You could do it. You'd possibly just keep the rules happy. You'd probably have to keep the stock floor pan in and mount the turbo above it.
Yeah.
And then build it like
So I think in the front's going to be better, and I suppose that means we don't have to run all that, all the covers over everything as well. We'd have to run heaps of covers.
Yeah.
And no one wants covers, if possible. So, fucking turbo, maybe in the middle.
Yeah. It might be the easiest. You just have it, and then it keeps it a bit more equal. You have them come up together. You can put the turbo here. The dump pipe will go down that side.
And I suppose we're V-banding.
Yeah.
So there's potential to make it undo V-band on the exhaust.
Yeah.
It's actually not going to be ridiculous a lot of work, obviously oil lines, but to pull it out if we need, to get to the engine or whatever, something if we had to. Not that we probably need to do that. It's more that we just, so the twin turbo kit, the turbos sit down here, and that's just fucking shit for working on at the track. So we found with my dad's car, because he's got it, this gap is a lot closer in the Z. So you just can't, we couldn't check anything. We couldn't even check manifold bolts. You have to really do it from underneath. So it's just terrible for racing.
Because these outlets are kind of in the wrong spot.
Anyway.
You could run something a bit more like the radiator you had on the 350Z and sit that more up in this space here.
Oh, yeah.
And that would gain you some more room again, if need be.
So there's options, and nothing too ridiculous.
No.
But I know what you mean. These are already on the wrong side. So, I might be better off getting a radiator. This isn't a fancy radiator. I had a pretty good radiator in it, and then we caught fire, and this is the radiator I put in. I think it was only a few $100, couple $100 in it. They're not.
It's just a Chinese.
Just so, it might be good to give that to my brother as a spare for his car, because I'm nice like that, and find one with these on the correct side, so that we're sort of saving, because then that's basically just running there to there. And this guy will run from there to there.
And we can
change them anyway.
We can move this pipe over a bit, and we've got room here for a header tank, a swell pipe, our bleed and fill point, because otherwise it's just dead space being wasted here. And that keeps all our pathways really open to fit a turbo here.
And keep in mind, this is a quick, cheap build. It's not feeling that way now, is it? It's feeling a little bit more in depth, but we'll see how we go.
Yeah, we started off naturally aspirated.
NA.
Stock ECU.
Just chuck it in, bro. Fucking send it. But that's not looking... it's still a budget build. Like you probably heard, we're not going for big power. So this is not a built motor. I think Nath has talked about doing...
So we're going to replace the timing chain tensioner on it, because we don't know too much of the history of the car.
Well, it's been bounced off a limiter as in a drift car at Calder Raceway, so I'd say that it's worth cracking her open and having a look.
Yeah, being a pre-up-rev motor, it's got the narrower oil pump, so a good cost-effective upgrade for these is to go to the HR or the up-rev pump, which has got a wider gear and it's a little bit stronger, and it'll just give us a bit more peace of mind.
And Nate's smart, so he can do all that stuff. He works on fancy stuff at work. Once it's all plumbed up, it can be started as it is. The engine was running. I drove the car off the trailer. I actually drove up and down the street, which wasn't smart, because I think the suspension in the Z wasn't done up properly, because there was a lot of burning smell of rubber and shit rubbing on things. So, but it runs. The gear. I wanted to see if the gearbox worked, and it did. So we can always start the engine like this. It's just I think it makes sense before all this time and effort we're putting into it that it doesn't just, a timing chain doesn't just snap or whatever, or break or whatever like that. It's just some preventative maintenance is a good thing to do with race cars, and can save you a lot of dramas at track, because you don't want to really be building cars at the track. You want it all right by the time you get there.
From that side, from the cabin side, that we really need is the throttle wiring. But we're deleting the body control we're deleting half of the fuse box because it's not needed. We could almost check the diagrams and just delete that whole lot, run a small fuse box for our relays for the ECU for the fuel pumps. We've got no thermofans, so we don't even have that.
Should we delete everything we can to start with, and then we go, oh, that's all that's left in that fuse box. We're only using a quarter of it.
Well, we'll find out where this stuff. We'll check diagrams. We'll work out where this goes, and we may even just be best off running this and then only adding power supply, throttle pedal.
Yeah, because we're not running the dash or anything, are we?
Not running the dash, not running the body control, not running indicators, not running ABS, not running wheel speed sensors.
Heated seats, electric seats, electric steering wheels. But we're gonna put I haven't got it yet, the Astra electric power steering pump, so we're not going to use the power steering that the Zeds come with. I've used it before and it works fucking awesome, and they're over here about $150 to buy, and some hoses.
Wheel speeds, which we're not running. We're not allowed traction control for most classes of racing. We're not running ABS, so there's
a lot of that's going. Yeah.
No benefit to having that. You don't indicate. We don't need the wiper.
I do on the roads. I'm not into Mercedes. Nath works on a lot of Mercedes. Actually, we should ask Nathan, do Mercedes from the factory come with indicators?
Yeah, they do. BMWs don't.
You hear that, Woodman? Your car doesn't have indicators, brother.
No horn, no wheel speed, again, no indicator. It's a Haltech, so we don't need our OBD. We don't need any body control units. We don't have an electric fuel flap. We don't have traction control. Yellow plug usually means airbag. So most of this really isn't needed. It might be quicker to just make the body side loom from scratch.
Really?
Yeah. Check out diagrams. They kind of look like power wires or grounding wires. Check what that is, and then we'll check what this is. So we'll see what needs to be kept, what can be removed.
Sure. Fucking happy days. Oh my god. It's pretty much like it was built for it. I reckon Nissan knew that people were going to take the SRs out of these before they even designed the VQ. I'm not actually sure of the timeline of all how that worked, but anyway. I feel like there should be a joke about putting things in holes, but I'm not that lowbrow. We are both married men, so take that as you do. So potentially all this wiring is not going to be used. We're going to keep it just so if we need any bits, but potentially that's how much you get rid of when you delete everything you don't need. Because we're running the Haltech ECU, we can do that. So that's gonna be pretty sweet. We were gonna, flash or modify the original ECU, get an up rev system or something. So that was an option, and that can be a good option for a lot of people. But because we're not using the cluster or any of that stuff, and the old man McClurkin's got an ECU spare, it makes sense. Yeah, fucking sick. Look at that. That's neat as. Look at that.
Or even if we end up you know, reusing that hole for the exhaust.
Yeah.
But there's no reason. ECU.
And everything can't sit up.
You know, somewhere here. Like what we did with the
Yeah. Yeah, I know, because that hole for the exhaust makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, because we'll probably end up, because those manifolds kind of come up high.
Yeah.
It'll make sense to run the downpipe down and under. Even if on that side when we make the engine mount, it might even part of the engine mount might be just you know, a big piece of pipe, and the exhaust runs through the middle of that engine mount.
If we can't get any of the American people to send ones over to us.
Or reply to any
Or
emails.
reply to our emails or anything. It's quite difficult. Because there's so much freedom over there. So much freedom they don't even need to reply.
Yeah.
And if they do reply, then you're ace. If they don't, I'm assuming it's because of all your freedom.
You shown everyone what you did up the back yet?
I don't know. It's pretty classy back here. So there's some bits of it. So we started cutting the big hole out because that's where Nath's going to go, and he's going to be like Flintstones. So this is where our tank's going to go, our Raceworks tank and surge tank. So we'll clean this up. I'll clean this up and make a frame and blah blah blah, and we'll be able to mount it in there all nice. I'm going to hardline it all so look all nice and fancy. But yeah. So hello. So today was really about writing lists and getting into the wiring and just sort of figuring out which direction we wanted to go with the turbos and everything. So next time, well, down the track, once on top of all that, we'll start looking at things like oil system and cooling system. We've worked out that the radiator is not going to quite work, so I'll be on the hunt for a radiator with the output and input on opposite sides to what we have. The 350 one's a bit too wide, so it doesn't fit in there. Unfortunately, that would have been a nice, easy solution. But that's all good. We've actually done really well today. Nate's done really well. I've just helped. I made hamburgers. Cool.
From.
I think it's like one of our most productive days.
Oh, yeah. Apart from pulling apart the Honda.
Oh yeah, that was productive. Because I smashed it.